In Turkey, police have clashed with demonstrators who took to the streets following the death of a 22-year-old activist in the southeastern city of Antakya. The protesters say Ahmet Atakan died after being hit by a tear gas canister. Officials say he fell from a roof after throwing stones at police. He is the sixth young man to die in demonstrations since the end of May, when the Gezi protests first started. But what was the reason for the protest? Let's get more from Tom Donkin, who joins us now from the World's Newsroom. Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. And you will remember a few months ago when those protests that started in central Istanbul over the redevelopment of a park there turned into a mass movement against the government in Turkey. And people are back on the streets now, and there's more violence and another death, as you mentioned. But what are the reasons? Are the grievances the same, or is there something different? And those two are questions that I'm going to put to my colleagues from the BBC's Turkish service, Serif and Selin. And Selin, if I could just start with you. You were there in the Gezi movement, the protests, very violent protests there. What were the reasons then, and is it different now?
Well, it's a bit complicated, but I'll try to be brief. The reasons are not entirely similar, I can put it that way. For the last couple of weeks, there have been protests, but scattered, not as big a movement as it was during the Gezi Park protests. What were these protests about? For instance, there was an Alevite shrine, and there was a plan about an Alevite shrine being built within a mosque in Ankara. And in that particular district where that mosque was planned to be built, there were protests for the last couple of days. There's a college, university in Ankara, for instance, and there are plans about a highway being built through a forest within that college. There were protests amongst the students in that particular university, for instance. And these protests, although they were scattered, they were of course anti-government, because these are government protests, although opposition parties, some of them agree with, for instance, the main opposition party agrees with the Alevite shrine plan. But these are of course anti-government protests. What happened yesterday was, in reaction to a young man, a 23-year-old man, getting killed during a protest in Antakya, which is at the border with Syria. And he was attending a protest in regard to what was happening in Ankara. And he got killed, well, he died. Excuse me for saying that, he died. And some claim that he died because he fell down through of a roof. Some claim that he died by being hit by a gas canister. Mm-hmm. So the protests yesterday were because of his death. Okay,
then and now, obviously there's different reasons for protests, but Serif, is it fair to say since Gezi Park something has changed with Turkey? There's more ways that people can get out on the street, and they realise that protesting does make a difference?
Absolutely, because previous to Gezi Park, it was generally thought that the only way that a protest could take place in Turkey would be through coming under an umbrella group, whether it be an NGO or an opposition party. But for the first time with the Gezi Park protest, what we saw was that people would go on social media and just say, at 1900 hours, be here, and people would turn up. So this definitely is a brand new thing in Turkey, the spontaneous gathering over social media and going to a protest that was launched on social media. This is definitely a brand new thing for Turkey.
Fascinating stuff. Sarah, thank you very much. Sorry, we're out of time. And Tim, there you go. It's not as big as the protests a few months ago, but we'll continue to monitor them up here in the World's Newsroom.